of an intellectually disabled man claim he's a victim of the mental health system. 38-year-old David Stephen has the mental age of a 5-year-old, and today he appeared in Levin's district court charged with assault. It's alleged he attacked a worker at the Kimberley Care Centre just a week after other assault charges were filed. Mauricio Olmedo Perez reports.
David Stevens was arrested 3 times in July for assaulting a police officer and these workers at a care centre in Hamilton. He was sentenced to a year's supervision at Levin's Kimberley Care Centre. But on Saturday, he allegedly assaulted 2 workers at Kimberley and ended up in Palmerston North's police cells. His parents say he shouldn't have gone to jail and claim he's a victim of the mental health system.
Somewhere needs to be found where he can be properly and professionally cared for.
The problem is that since David is intellectually disabled, he can't be detained in mental institutions unless he's assessed as having a psychiatric disability.
A person with an intellectual disability doesn't come under the Mental Health Act. The support services they need are quite different.
So because David's considered as not having a mental illness, he's treated like a sound adult. But his parents say he's violent and should be detained.
David isn't really capable of making, taking and carrying through important decisions about his own life. They have to be made for him.
They may have their plea answered. A new bill which will allow people like David to have compulsory care will be introduced to Parliament later this week. Mauricio Olmedo Perez, One Network News.
There's also parental concern about another health problem, this time in Dunedin. One mum's keeping her children home from school because she's sick of them getting head lice. Health officials concede nits are a problem and are alive and kicking in most schools. John McDermott reports.
Unwelcome visitors. The Dobia children have had head lice 5 times this year.
I've already spent close to $200 on treatments, and I've just about got rid of it, and I don't want to send them back to have a repeat of it.
Teresa Dobia doesn't blame the school, but thinks parents nationwide need more help dealing with the problem.
There have always been children with head lice, there always will be, but the numbers certainly seem to be up on normal.
Sometimes it worries me.
Health authorities are concentrating their nit-busting efforts on education. They urge parents to brush or comb children's hair nightly, check their heads weekly, only treat live head lice or eggs close to the scalp, and seek that treatment through a chemist.
I think it's up to the authorities to find something that's going to make a difference, or a cure, and make it affordable.
But the Health Funding Authority says it's not planning to ask Pharmac to subsidise treatments. As for the Dobias, a public health nurse will offer to help. John McDermott, One Network News.
South Auckland residents who live on land contaminated by asbestos look set to reconsider legal action against the Manukau City Council. More than 1,200 Flatbush homes are built in an area where asbestos traces have been found. Several homeowners, chosen to work with the City Council, today walked out after months of discussion. They say the council's taking too long to fix the problem.
We really want action now. We want the people that have got asbestos on their land to have that remediation done and to know that they're not having to pay for it.
Well, legal action would be disappointing for all parties. Legal action is very expensive and it is very time-consuming. It takes a long, long time.
The Asbestos Action Group says if residents revive plans to sue the council, it'll cost $30,000.
And in money news tonight, a very quiet start of the week on the share market despite strengthening offshore markets. The NZSE 40 index down 26 points on low turnover of $47 million. Telecom down 25, but Bay caught one of the few to rise, up 20 cents on the back of last week's good result. Fletcher Energy was sold off strongly in the US to close down 9 cents. Fletcher Paper, though, up 1. On the currency markets, the Kiwi is up against all our major trading partners, bar the yen. And it's also been a quiet start to the week on the debt market.
An historic town clock, which told the time at the start of this century, is to make a dramatic return at the start of the new millennium. The people of Fielding recently found the remains of the clock, and today they started work on a new tower to house the giant timepiece. John Newton reports.
Smooth as clockwork, the 97-year-old clock ticking and whirring again. It's similar in design to Big Ben. The clock resided here in the Fielding Post Office Tower till an earthquake wrecked the building in 1942. The clock was then dismantled, packed away, and almost forgotten for over half a century.
After 57 years of storage, it's simply incredible. And then when we found the boxes in different places and that they all came together, that's even more amazing. Here we go!
Today, the Mayor unearthed a $200,000 project to build a new clock tower in the very centre of Fielding. The clock will start at midnight at the beginning of the new millennium, and its restorer says it should just keep on going.
Oh, this will go for several hundred years.
The council's now raising money by offering time for sale. Anyone wanting their name in the new clock tower register can buy one of the seconds, minutes or hours leading up to the start of the new millennium. John Newton, One Network News.
Well, updating tonight's top stories, and a former girlfriend of Scott Watson's has today given evidence at his murder trial. The woman, whose identity was suppressed, said she asked Watson if he'd killed Blenheim friends Ben Smart and Olivia Hope. She says he was agitated, but went on to say that he hadn't done it.
Survivors are still being found from Turkey's earthquake as the death toll passes 12,000. But rescuers are losing hope of finding many others alive and are tonight scaling down their search efforts. But is New Zealand prepared to cope with an earthquake of the same magnitude? Political reporter Duncan Garner takes a close-up look.
Searching for loved ones, but it may be too late. 12,000 dead, 33,000 missing. Rescuers say Turkish emergency services were slow to act, and when they did, they provided soldiers and spades. What Turkey really needed was more earth movers and modern equipment. So, could New Zealand cope with such a quake?
New Zealand is really quite well prepared at the moment, but no one can be complacent.
John Lawton heads the new Emergency Management Ministry, and he says, like Turkey, New Zealand's short of modern equipment like sensory devices that pick up signs of life. We have fewer than 20 nationwide, and in a big quake, we would rely on Australia and the US to help.
We have enough earth-moving equipment, that sort of stuff. In terms of specialist equipment for emergencies, no, we don't. But we would expect to get that from overseas when the time comes anyway.
There's been 96 earthquakes in New Zealand in the past year, and when the big one strikes, John Lawton says New Zealanders may have to wait for up to 3 days before help arrives. He says that's not good enough.
What we want to do is be able to respond more quickly.
And these are our hotspots. Wellington's most at risk, and if you live on the west coast, Queenstown or Christchurch, you face a 70% chance of a big earthquake in the next 30 years. The Hawke's Bay is also a high-risk area.
There's definitely a risk of an earthquake happening in Wellington, and you'd be a fool to say, oh, it's never going to happen in my lifetime.
Kate McIntyre runs Wellington Hospital's emergency plan. To cope in a big quake, patients would be moved to other hospitals, including Australia.
We look at shipping people out for definitive care, so it's not a matter of setting up field hospitals or things like that.
4 New Zealand officials will travel to Turkey in the next 2 months to check out just what went wrong. Duncan Garner, One Network News.
Well, later in the news hour, breaking the age barrier, enduring oldies with a point to prove.
Next, though, Kiwi cricketers with something to crow about.
Yes, indeed. Jeff Crow, the new boss, is fizzing about the future. Plus, a champagne farewell at home for Brandy Alexander. And despite appearances, Ruth is ready to kickstart our Kings.